It had been so long since anyone had touched me, and the thought hit me harder than I cared to admit. Then, I felt his hands move lower, slowly and gently down the curve of my back. My breath caught in my throat, and I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. My mind was racing, yet I remained silent. I told myself it was okay, that he was just helping, that I was imagining things. But I wasn't. His hands hovered there for a moment near the edge where my top ended. I could feel his hesitation, and I could feel my own. Instead of stopping him, I said, "It's okay. You can rub there too." The words hung in the air like something poisonous, and the moment they left my mouth, I knew I couldn't take them back. Leonard didn't say anything, and he didn't stop either. I closed my eyes and felt his hands on me, lower than they should have been. My heart was beating so hard that I thought he could hear it. I wanted to move, to sit up, to tell him to stop, but I didn't. I couldn't. I let it happen. Even now, I don't know why. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe I was too desperate to feel wanted, even when it was wrong. Or maybe, just maybe, I just didn't care anymore. That day on the beach broke something inside me, and nothing would ever be the same again. By the way, if you've made it this far into the story, thank you for sticking with me. I know it's not easy to hear, and I appreciate your listening. If you found this video interesting or if you think someone might relate to what I'm sharing, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps me to keep sharing stories like this and lets me know I'm not alone out here. So, let's get back to the story. After that day on the beach, something changed. I couldn't ignore it. What I felt, what I saw, and the way Leonard looked at me afterwards. It wasn't just a lingering look or a passing moment, it was constant. Every time I caught his eye, there was something different about him, something I couldn't quite put my finger on but couldn't ignore. I tried to bury it. When we got home that night, I did everything I could to act normal. I made dinner, asked Leonard about school, and folded laundry late into the night, my hands shaking the whole time. I kept replaying everything that had happened, his hands, the way he lingered, the tension I felt in my own body. I hated myself for it, and I hated him for making me feel that way about my own son. Phoenix didn't notice anything. He came home late as usual, his tie loose, his face tired. He kissed my cheek out of habit, only a shadow of what it used to be. "Long day?" I asked, hoping for some sort of conversation. He grunted and nodded, already halfway to the living room. It was always like this. His presence felt like an afterthought, and I felt invisible again. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Phoenix snored softly beside me. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept thinking of Leonard, of his hands and his gaze. I knew it wasn't right. I knew I should stop it, whatever it was, before it went any further. But there was another part of me, something dark, something lonely, that wanted to hold on, that craved the attention, the touch, the feeling of being seen. The days passed, and Leonard said nothing, but his silence spoke louder than words. He wasn't avoiding me, not exactly. Instead, it was as if he stayed closer. I'd catch him watching me when I cooked, when I cleaned, when I sat alone on the couch at night, and I let it happen. I didn't stop him, and I didn't stop myself. Then came the next weekend. It was hot again, and the house felt suffocating. Phoenix was gone, working some last-minute shift, leaving me and Leonard alone as before. I asked him if he wanted to go to the beach again, just the two of us. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought being outside would help clear my head. Maybe I wanted to test myself, to see if I could push it all away. The journey was quiet this time. Leonard wasn't wearing his earphones. He just sat there, looking out the window, his knee bouncing restlessly. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. When we got to the beach, it was almost empty. I remember how blue the water looked and how the wind felt on my face. I spread out the towels again, just like before, and Leonard helped me set everything up. This time, I didn't ask him to put oil on my back. I couldn't. Instead, I lay there with my eyes closed, pretending that everything was all right. But even with my eyes closed, I could feel his gaze. I could feel him watching me. The real breaking point came later that afternoon. We decided to rinse off in the beach showers before heading home. It was supposed to be quick, just to get the sand off our skin. But then something happened that I still can't explain. When we reached the showers, Leonard stepped under first and let the water run down his back. I stood off to the side and watched him for a moment before I went in too. I don't know what came over me, but I stripped off my outer clothes and stood beside him. The water was cool against my skin. Leonard looked at me, startled. I don't know if it was surprise, confusion, or something else, but he didn't say a word. I looked at him, really looked at him, and said, "You should take off your shorts too. You need a good wash." I don't know why I said it. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I was in control, that I could make this stop. Or maybe I was testing him, testing myself. He hesitated for a second, then did as I said and pulled his shorts off. And there we were, together, alone. The water poured down on us, washing away everything but what we were both feeling. I turned my back to him and asked quietly, "Help me with my back." And he did. His hands were careful again, as before, but there was no mistaking the tension. I felt it in him, and I felt it in me. When he touched my waist, I froze. The air around us seemed to thicken, and the sound of the water drowned out everything else. I could have walked away. I could have stopped it. But instead, I leaned back, closer to him. I grabbed his hands and brought them to my chest. And when I did, he didn't pull away. I can't explain what happened next. I won't. It was a moment, a blur of need, loneliness, and something else I won't name. It wasn't soft, and it wasn't slow. It was desperate, passionate, wrong in every way. But I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to. And when it was over, we just stood there, the water still pouring down on us, washing away the evidence but not the truth. He held me then, held me like no one had in years, and I let him. We didn't speak after that. We dried ourselves, packed up, and walked back to the car in silence. I watched Leonard out of the corner of my eye. His face was flushed, his movements stiff. I knew I'd ruined everything. I knew we'd crossed a line that could never be crossed again. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt alive. The drive home was quiet at first. The car felt too small, too heavy, as if the air itself was pressing down on us. I gripped the wheel tightly, trying to concentrate on the road, but my mind was spinning. I could still feel him, Leonard, his hands, his body, the weight of everything we'd just done. I kept glancing at him in the passenger seat. He sat stiffly, staring out the window, his face flushed, his jaw set. And then, out of nowhere, he spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost uncertain. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. But I heard him. What just happened back there? My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I considered pretending I hadn't heard him, brushing it off, changing the subject. But there was no point in pretending, not after what we'd done. I took a shaky breath and replied, "I don't know." It was the truth, or as close to it as I could get. I didn't know what had happened or why. I just knew that everything had changed. We didn't speak again until we pulled into the driveway. I turned the car off, but neither of us moved. Leonard finally looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that frightened me. It wasn't confusion, guilt, or even shame. It was longing. "How long have you felt this way?" he asked. His words sent a shiver down my spine because I'd been asking myself the same question. I looked at him, and it was as if a dam had burst inside me. "I don't know," I whispered. Maybe longer than I cared to admit. We were both silent after that, just sitting in the dark. I thought that was it, that we'd go inside, try to forget it all, pretend it hadn't happened. But Leonard had other ideas. Before I could open the door, he leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, as if he was afraid I'd pull away. But I didn't. I let him kiss me, and I kissed him back. And then I lost control. I don't know if it was the loneliness, the years of neglect, or the way Leonard looked at me like no one had looked at me in so long. But I let it happen, right there in front of our house. Leonard pulled me into him, his hands sliding over me as if they belonged there. I felt alive. I felt wanted. I felt seen for the first time in years. I didn't care about anything else. I don't know how long we stayed like that, tangled together. But eventually, we moved inside. I don't remember much of the walk to the door, just the feel of his hand on mine, the silence between us humming like electricity. We didn't speak, we didn't need to. Once we were inside, everything escalated as if we'd been holding back for too long and the dam had finally burst. The next few days were a blur. Leonard stayed close to me, always finding reasons to brush against me or look at me when no one else was watching. I told myself to stop, to pull away, to end whatever it was. But every time I looked at him, I saw the same loneliness I was feeling. It was like we were mirrors of each other, reflecting back the same need, the same emptiness. And I couldn't say no. I didn't want to. At night, I'd lie in bed next to Phoenix, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of his breathing. I'd think of Leonard in the next room, the way his hands felt, the way he made me feel alive again. And then I'd close my eyes, the guilt coiling like a snake in my chest. I knew it couldn't last. I knew it was wrong. But I couldn't stop it. The tension between us grew stronger every day until it finally exploded. It was late one night. Phoenix was back at work, and Zoe was asleep. Leonard and I were in the kitchen. I was doing the dishes, trying not to think about it, when I felt him behind me. I turned around, and there he was, looking at me the same way he had on the beach. "Leonard," I said quietly, trying to warn him. But he didn't stop. He came closer, so close that I could feel his breath on my neck. "Mom," he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." I was frozen. My heart was beating so hard that I thought it would burst. I wanted to tell him to stop, to go back to his room, to leave me alone. But I didn't. Instead, I looked up at him and said the one thing I shouldn't have. "I can't stop either." And that was it. That was the moment it all fell apart. Leonard kissed me again, harder this time, desperately, and I kissed him back. I didn't care that it was wrong. I didn't care about Phoenix or Zoe or the life we had built together. All I cared about was him, Leonard, my son, the only person who made me feel like I mattered. Things haven't been the same since that day on the beach. In fact, I'm not sure they ever will be. Leonard and we crossed a line, one that can't be erased, no matter how hard I try to convince myself otherwise. What started as a moment has turned into something I can't control. The guilt is there, heavy, constant, but it won't stop me. That's the part that scares me the most. I look at my husband, Phoenix, and my daughter, Zoe, every day and wonder how they don't see it, how they don't notice the cracks that are spreading through our family. Maybe they're too busy with their own lives to see me slipping, or maybe I've just gotten better at hiding it. But deep down, I know it can't last forever. Secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, the fallout will destroy everything. I've tried to stop. I've told myself over and over again that this is wrong, that Leonard deserves better, that I deserve better. But every time he touches me, every time he looks at me like I'm the only person in the world, I lose myself. He makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years, maybe ever. And that's the truth I have to live with. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can fix it. And that's why I want to share my story with you. Maybe someone out there has an answer, something I haven't thought of. Maybe you can help me find a way out of this mess I've made before it's too late. So, please, if you have any advice, if you've been in this situation or know someone who has, I want to hear from you. And if nothing else, let this be a warning. Loneliness can take you places you never thought you'd go. Don't get lost like I did. Don't let your world fall apart before you realize what's happening. Because once you cross that line, there's no going back. Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts. Like this video if you found it helpful and subscribe for more. I need to know I'm not alone. Sometimes the greatest betrayals aren't the ones we commit against others, but the ones we commit against ourselves.